and then I'll walk you through the grant application and access to the online portal. And then please feel free, if you have questions at any time, to pop them into the Q&A box. I think chat is disabled for this webinar, but put them in the Q&A box and I will answer them when I can. I think my goal is to answer most questions at the end, but if there's something super pressing midway through, I may stop and answer that. My colleague, Sean Donaldson, the program compliance specialist for the Board of Supervisors office, is on to help me with that. So if he needs to interrupt me, he will. So I'm so happy to have so many of you here. This is our first ever webinar for this grant program. This is an annual program that's funded with local taxpayer dollars, but this is the first year, or we've made some changes to the program for this round, and I wanted to communicate that to everyone. I think this is just good best practices for getting more involvement in this grant program. So there's sort of two grant programs that are in the same grant cycle. There's the economic development program and the quality of life. The two different kinds of grants, but they're in sort of the same grant cycle. The applications are very similar. The review process is the same, and the board will consider them at the same time. They also have the same budget, or sort of a total budget for both programs. So there isn't sort of a set allocation for either or. It's just sort of the way it breaks down just depends on the types of applications we get that cycle and what the board decides to make the decisions on. So again, my name is Allison Wells. I'm the grants assistant for the Board of Supervisors office. It is my job to administer this program. So I handle the communications, I do the staff review, I handle any sort of troubleshooting with the grant portal, or if you have any questions about this. I facilitate board review and discussion. So ultimately the board makes all decisions on all grants for Johnson County. I just provide sort of review and facilitation. I will get the contracts signed and executed. So you submit invoices for payment to me, and I'll do the mid and end of year reporting. So you'll see a lot of me if you are a grant recipient this year. And as I said, we've had some pretty substantial changes to the program since the last cycle. We used to do this grant, the portal would, or the grant cycle would open in the fall for grants that would start for the next July, which was a really, really long timeline. And I think we definitely learned in the 2020 grant cycle that things had really fundamentally changed from people who'd submitted applications in the fall of 2019. By the time they got funding in July of 2020, all of their plans had sort of changed. And it's not just because of the pandemic, but I think it's a lot easier to write a grant in the spring for money you're going to get in the summer than to do it with a much longer timeline. So hopefully this is a lot easier for you as grant people applying for grants and grant writers and for organizations. And it's a lot easier for us as well to sort of shorten the timeline. This also means that for the first year ever, the board has set a budget for these grants before we've opened the cycle, which is best practices for grants across the board. So this year we have $300,000 for both grants. So as you can see from the number of people on this call, it's going to be a competitive grant cycle this year. So I'm very excited to have all this attention, but everyone needs to be sort of aware that it will likely be quite competitive this year. The other new thing about this program for this fiscal year is that we're using our online grant portal for the first time for the entire cycle. For the current recipients of the programs for this fiscal year have been introduced to it for, we used it for getting contracts signed, and we used it for the mid-year report. So you're a little bit familiar. If you've applied for other Johnson County funding opportunities in the past year or so, so the direct assistance program or the Community Food and Farm Grant or hunger relief or juvenile justice and youth development program, those all use the same grant portal. So if you've done that, then you've already been introduced to it. And it's a pretty user-friendly portal, but I wanted to walk everyone through it since this is sort of a first time for people. And this way, this meeting is being recorded, and if anyone has any questions and wants to review something, they absolutely can. I'll make this recording available to everyone, but also feel free to contact me at any time for if you have any follow-up questions. Let me see if I can send a message to everyone, but I'll put the email address that's best to get a hold of me for grant-related questions. So we have this grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov email. So you should see that now in the in the chat, and that gets to me. You could also email me directly. My email is in a lot of things, awells@johnsoncountyiowa.gov. But this way, if there's any sort of staff turnover with grants, or when we expand, when we fully staff up the grant staff, it'll be much easier for everyone to see it. So grants is where I really like to channel the correspondence for this grant program, just because that way everyone can see it and we make sure we don't miss anything. So reviewing some things, again, this funding is for fiscal year 24, which for Johnson County starts on July 1st of this year, 2023, and goes through June 30th, 2024. Most of the grants that we award will end up being billed on a quarterly basis. So you will submit an invoice every quarter and then get sort of a payment for a quarter of your total award over the course of the year. Applications are open now, as you're all aware, and they close on Friday, March 31st at 4 p.m. Late submissions will not be accepted, but you have 2 weeks and a day to finish it. All right, eligible organizations and all the information you need is actually available on our website. And so I'm going to share my screen now and walk you through relevant information and show you what the grant portal looks like, and we will go through that. So this is our grant webpage, www.johnsoncountyiowa.gov/grants. This is for the Economic Development and Quality of Life Grant Program. We do have plans for other ARPA-funded grant programs. We have not developed those opportunities yet, so this is a very separate program. And if at any point in time you end up applying for that, just know that you will have to scope that request to be very different from this. So this is a different program. Focus on this as like economic development, quality of life, broadly for Johnson County residents. This is paid for with local taxpayer dollars. But keep in mind that if there are other opportunities down the line, that you will need to make sure if you apply for any other Johnson County grants, like with social services or anything, those grants need to be scoped separately so that Johnson County is not paying for the same thing from multiple streams. So here's just some overview information that I've already shared with you. Eligible organizations are usually, the board only provides this to not-for-profit organizations. You can apply if you don't have 501c3 status, but it may really affect your ability to get funding. And generally, because this is local taxpayer dollars, it is a requirement of the state of Iowa that the funding must have a public purpose. So you'll need to make the case in your proposal for how this funding will affect Johnson County residents broadly. You can target, your programming to a certain population, make a case for why that population in particular maybe needs this programming, but none of your events that you host with this can be like fully exclusive. Like, for example, if you are an organization that is at the University of Iowa, like maybe you're the soccer club or something, you couldn't apply for funding from us and intend that your programming and all of your events were that the only people who could attend your events are undergraduates at the University of Iowa. That would not be something that the supervisors would fund, because this needs to support Johnson County broadly. But again, you make your case for that in your proposal. And so the first decision you're going to need to make as you determine, as you go forward with this grant application, is whether you're going to apply for an economic development grant or a quality of life grant. And there's more information down below that can help you make that decision. Most broadly, economic development grants are focused on promoting economic development in Johnson County. And again, you can use your proposal to explain what you mean by that, and how what you're doing and your programming and your operations support and promote economic development in Johnson County, or quality of life, which would be enhancing the quality of life for Johnson County residents. So you sort of make the decision about what is best for your organization, and in your proposal, you can sort of support that. But as I mentioned, the applications themselves are largely the same. There's only like just a couple questions are worded slightly differently. So I'll walk you through one of them, but this should be helpful whichever one you're applying for. So now I'm going to walk you through the online application, and let's see if this works with the screen. Okay, perfect. Can you see this new screen? Okay. So this is the online access to the Johnson County Grants Portal. And like I said, if you have applied to any of those grant programs or funding programs that I mentioned before, direct assistance, JJYD, hunger relief, community food and farm, all of those have used this portal. So if you have used this portal before, you need to make sure that you don't try and create another account. If you've not used this portal before, then please create an account, and it will ask for your email and basic information. If you have created an account in this before, but you don't remember your password, use the forget password, and it requires you to get into your email, and it'll give you a temporary password and get back in. That tends to be where we have the most questions of how to get into the portal, and we have to do the most troubleshooting. So if you have any issues with that, let me know, but usually the answer is to reset your password through the forget password option. I have already created an account in this portal, and I have the password saved in here, so I can just go straight in. Here we go. Once you have started your application, try not to click that application link again. You can get back into, and I'll show you at the end, if you have already started an application, you can save it and then get back to it, but you need to get back to it through a different way than the link that I just clicked. So I'll show you that at the end when we get into the page again. But for right now, if you're starting for the first time, you go in this way. And here it sort of explains, you're going to be getting some emails from us explaining, with your saved application or confirmation that you submitted your application. Make sure it doesn't go to your spam filter. Here it also explains the evaluation criteria. This is the rubric that I will use to do my staff review. So full transparency, this is how I will be judging your applications. The board will be given this, and so this is also guiding criteria for them as well, but they make their own decisions. If you have already been in this portal before, it may remember some of your organization information. So for me, my sort of sample organization here is the Butternut Dance Academy. It's already in here. If you have not started one, you will need to enter this information, for the first time. It's all very basic information: your organization name, your address, your city, website, your tax ID. This is required, and this is something you can note as you go through. If there's a red star next to it, it's a required field. Your annual operating budget. This is not a required field, the unique entity ID. If you have done anything with federal funding, you likely have one of these, often state funding too. You have to get it by registering through the System for Award Management, or SAM.gov. If you have not experienced this, I do highly recommend that your organization start to work on this. The federal government is increasingly asking that organizations that receive any federal funding at all need to have a UEI, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to process. So I do encourage you, if at any point you may want to apply for maybe one of our ARPA funded grant programs or anything like that, that you do work on getting one. You do not have to for this program, but I put this in here just to sort of prompt you that if you're going to be applying for funding and you want to be able to keep applying for funding, this is sort of the direction that governments are going. So I do encourage you to register with your organization if you want to be applying for state or federal grants or pass-through funds like the American Rescue Plan Act funds. Brief overview of your organization, including your history, your organization's key accomplishments, etc. I just have some letters in there to get through. The next page is your key contacts. So this is sort of the head of your organization, primary contact for your organization. Maybe this is your executive director. Maybe this is, sort of chief operating officer, something like that. And if that person is the person who should be the one that we're going to be emailing, please make sure you have this selected. There's sort of two primary emails that are of focus when we work with this grant portal. Whatever email you put in here is what I will be using to communicate with you, but whatever email you put in the grant portal is what you will get automatic emails about with regards to your submission has been completed. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then we get to the request information, and this is where sort of the meat of your proposal will be. So you'll put in your amount that you requested, and you have to put something in, otherwise you won't be able to go forward. So maybe the next question is, what problem in Johnson County is your organization responding to? sort of basic principles for any sort of grant is there needs to be sort of a problem that you're responding to. There needs to be something that, why does your organization exist? Why does your programming exist? There must be something that is missing or that is deficient in Johnson County that you are responding to. So maybe for this organization, there are not enough dance classes for everyone. Then you say, like, to detail the services you'll provide with this funding during the award period. You will want to give pretty substantial responses to this because this is all we have to go off of. So if you are going to do a lot of programming, if this is going primarily to operational support, mention what you're going to be doing with it, what like the mission of your organization is, what sort of things your organization does. Maybe you need to hire like a new FTE to support expansion of services, something like that. So you put that in here, explain in some detail. How will you measure the success of the program? So we want to be thinking about how will you know that this has been successful. So if my mission here is to have more dance classes, we will increase, our goal is then to increase the number of people taking dance classes. And for the data we'll measure, it'll be number of dancers. There are not, great question. There are not character limits for any of the grant fields. I imagine at some point you will hit an end. I've not actually tested how many characters you can put in there, but I've not put any limits. If at any point you're writing and you have reached the end and for some reason there's like an issue that it won't let you go forward, please contact me. But we've not hit the limit of it yet. So feel free to write away. Yeah, you definitely are going to want to write more than what I'm writing right here. So that's a good question. Count the number of dancers. And then we've got a couple of questions here that are sort of yes, no, and then you need to provide an answer if you answered yes. So will the request support or increase social, cultural, or recreational opportunities for Johnson County residents? So in this case, yes, dance is great recreation. Does it leverage other sources of revenue? In general, the Johnson County Board of Supervisors, they're very concerned with being the sole funder for an organization or having an organization that has not found any other funding. So they do appreciate if they can share how else you're being supported. Maybe you have like really robust fundraising efforts. Maybe you want to use this funding as sort of local match so that you can apply for like a state grant. Maybe you mix this with other foundation grants or things that you have, or you're able to generate income through like programming fees. Make sure you put that in there because the board really wants to make sure we're not in a position where the board is the sole funder and the only reason that an organization is staying afloat. So here we're going to say yes. Local match for state grant. Will's question. Okay, as the person who will be looking at the grants, do you have a general recommendation for word limits? I don't. I would say like having at least a robust paragraph, if not two, would be really helpful. Just mostly making sure that, I know this is not a very satisfying answer, but that you're able to answer the question in full and give enough detail that someone who knows nothing about your organization could understand what's going on. So, if, for example, I'm making this case that it's important for people to take dance classes, maybe supporting it with like some local study or something that says, like it's best practices in dance classes to do this this kind of activity like helps people stay away from doing other activities that could be more risky, or there are studies that exercise is helpful to releasing for like mental health or things like that. So making sure you have like a full explanation of that will be really, really helpful. So that's that answer. Austin, are grants partially funded or is it all or nothing? That is a great question. They are often partially funded. So the board I will do staff review because of the amount of interest I'm gauging over this grant cycle, including the large number of you on this call. I am concerned that there will be requests that really, really outstretch the budget for this program. So I'm encouraging everyone, if at any point here, if you're able to do like A, B, and C for $10,000, but you're able to do A and B for $8,000, to include that in your proposal somewhere. And there's a place, when you get to the budget area, that's a good place to do that. When we get to, how the impact if not fully funded question down here, that will be a good place to explain that, because I am concerned that we're going to bring this before the board, and the board's going to have like a really difficult decision in determining where to sort of divide the money. And what I really don't want to happen is for the board to sort of arbitrarily reduce award amounts just to fit more organizations in. And I think I really want to make sure that if your organization cannot do this programming without, $10,000, that you communicate that. So that we're not trying to ask you to do $10,000 worth of programming for $3,000, if that makes sense. So yes, partial funding is definitely a possibility. Here is where we sort of ask you to connect your programming to some of the other plans that the supervisors have for various things. So here we're talking specifically about the comprehensive plan, which is sort of about development in Johnson County, the rural economic development plan, which is new since the last grant cycle. So particularly if your programming is focused on, or if your activities are focused on rural economic development, these are good to look at, or the strategic plan. The strategic plan is out of date. We're about to start another cycle of the strategic plan, or I mean, it says it's sort of over, but we're about to start a new cycle of it. But so this is the one that you can reference currently. And here these should link you directly to it. So here, this will take you to the economic development plan. You can scroll through it and, find how it could connect to what your programming is. So here, yes, advancing with economic development. And here is where you can address if it's not fully funded. So we can support 3 classes with $10,000, but only 1 with $2,000. Did your organization receive county funding last year? That's either yes or no. And then you explain if you used it last year. Here are the attachments. So we have a board of directors list, a budget for the project, and a financial statement. We don't have a template for the budget. We know that that's something we may change in the future. I know that the social services grant programs provide you with a template. Feel free to use whatever template or budget you already have. If we have further questions, we may be contacting you. But in order to attach a file, you browse. Here, this is the board of directors. Hit upload. This portal accepts most types of documents. So PDF, Excel, Word, camera, phone, pictures from your iPhone. It accepts a lot. But here, I also want to show you an example of how not to attach a file. So if you forget to hit the upload button, it will look like it might be there, but it won't be there. And so I'm going to leave this as a mistake, and we'll show you how the system will not let you submit your application without all of the required documents. And here is if you're a not-for-profit or public entity, please provide your most recent 990 or W-9. Just add that, put that. And you'll know it's been uploaded fully when you see this sort of blue hyperlink. So after you're done, that's the end of the application. It takes you to review and submit. As you see, whoop, there's a problem because I didn't fully attach that file. But it tells you what's wrong, and you can go down, and here it didn't get attached properly. So you're going to browse, we're going to use our budget file, upload, and there we go. We update that, and now it's fully in here, and you get one last chance to look over everything. All right, let's see Will's question. That's a good question. So Will has an organization that's got some sort of subsidiary projects. I would say mention it. yeah, mention it for sure. Yeah, but I think then we can sort of just have all of the information. So thank you. That's a really good question. So mention if you, if maybe just a part of your organization, or if you're sort of, yeah, then mention it for sure in the application, and then we have all the information. So this is one last chance to review all of your answers. And then when you're done reviewing, you can submit. You can also hit save and finish later. If you do this, I'll show you how you can get in and look at it later. But for right now, I'm going to submit it. And you'll know it's been submitted because it'll say, thank you, your application has been submitted. If you had just saved it, it would pop up here where it says in progress applications. Once you've submitted it, it's under submitted applications, and you'll get an email that sort of shows this. But I will show you, if you perhaps had just saved your application, how you can get back into it. So here, got it. Exit this. So if you started an application and then saved it partway through, you will get an email that says your application has not been submitted. Here is how you click to get back into it. So you could do that. Or if you lost that email, couldn't get to that email, you can also get to it here. So this will take you to the grant portal that you need to log into. And this is different from starting a new application. We're just logging in to the application portal. And this way, or the sort of the account side, the grant account side, so then you can see anything that's sort of in progress. So that's sort of my overview of this. Looks like I've got quite a few questions, so I am going to stop my screen sharing and focus on answering those. So yeah, get your questions ready and you can throw them into the Q&A box and I will answer them. All right, so we've got a question. If we could fit in either economic development or quality of life, do we choose one and mention the other? I would say you definitely have to choose one. Do not apply for both programs. So choose one of them. If you, if for example, your organization provides like recreational opportunities that are an economic development driver, like maybe you're like a lot of tourists come to Johnson County for your things that your organization does, you could mention that. So you could say like, this is, we're applying under the economic development grant because we are bringing this amount of dollars or this amount of people to Johnson County. This is the ways that we encourage economic development. We also, these events are also very fun for Johnson County residents to come to, not just tourists, something like that. So you can definitely mention both, but pick which lane you want to be in and make that case sort of your firmest, if that makes sense. All right. Can you repeat how funds are dispersed? So once you have been awarded funding, so the grant period will close on the 31st of March. Staff review will start in April. At some point, probably later in April, I will facilitate getting the board review going. I want the board to be able to review all the proposals before I present them in a public meeting. So that will happen in April. And probably in May, when we'll have board discussion on and consideration of the grant proposals. So I want the board to have plenty of time to review the proposals on their own time. And then I will bring staff recommendations before the board probably in May. The board will discuss, make decisions, and then approve contracts by the end of June so that we're ready to do to have contracts finalized and start the grant cycle of funding beginning in July. And so the way that funding is dispersed then is that you send an invoice to grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov, and then I submit a claim to our accounts payable folks and they mail you a check. All right, next question. You can still apply. So like I said, the board tends to want it to be to not-for-profit entities. That can be nonprofit. As a city subsidiary of the city of Iowa City, that's also you're not going to be gaining, mostly if we're avoiding for-profit like companies. So the Iowa City Senior Center can certainly still apply for the funding. That's a good question. How does the board balance repeat awardees and new awardees? That's a great question. That is something that is really up to the individual board members. Some board members have shown a tendency to want to award to the same organizations repeatedly. Others would prefer to be new organizations. So I can't really answer how they're going to, how the collective of them is going to decide this cycle. We also have a new board member. So this would be the first cycle that V has been able to take part in. So I'm not sure where they're going to land on that question. So that's just something to know. In the past, there have been some iterations of the board where they pretty much exclusively awarded to the same organizations. We've really moved in a direction of being much more competitive. Last year, I think we had 2 or 3 new organizations that received funding. So it just really depends. But I encourage you to apply even if you've never gotten funding before, because we're moving in a direction where we want this to be competitive, and we want any organization to have a chance if you put forward a good proposal and are focused on the goals of economic development and quality of life. Okay, what has been the typical average amount awarded in the past quality of life grant? Great question. The best way to answer that question is to look at the Johnson County, Iowa.gov/grants page. Here, I can pull that up again too. That is where you can see the history of all the grant awards. And you'll see it really, really varies. So I'm going to share my screen again. If you scroll down this page, you should be able to see this, yes. You'll see past grant recipients. So you'll see that the budget of $300,000 is a little lower than most fiscal years. So that is a slight concern. But here you can see exactly how much each organization received in the past. So you'll scroll down and you can see it really, really varies. And you never know, because sometimes there is a special need for extra capital expenditures for 1 year. 1 year an organization will get a lot more. Maybe it's because they needed to purchase a new space or something extra for that year. So that's sort of where you can see that information. And in terms of recommending a minimum or maximum request, I don't have a recommendation. I say most of all, your request needs to match your need and what you communicate in your application. Like, don't tell me that you want your, if you're throwing 3 events and you say each event's going to cost $3,000, don't then put in a request for $20,000, because it begs the question, what are you going to do with the rest of it? So just make sure that your application explains where the funding is going to go. And why you need all of that funding. But I would say, as you know, this is going to be a really competitive cycle. I would say it would be very, very unlikely for the board to consider a request that is nearing 6 figures. So I would say make your case, but I don't think it's good practice for anyone to submit an application for like $120,000 for this cycle. Okay, how do we learn about the social services grants? Good question. The Social Services Department has their own grant page. You should be able to see this. You can scroll down to the Social Services page, their grant page. They have these block grants, is what they call them. They are every other year usually, and then they have other pockets of funding that emerge at different times. So in general, the best way to know about any Johnson County grants is to follow our social media and get on our community providers list. I think most of your organizations probably are, because that's probably how you heard about this. So that is the best way to keep track of those sorts of things. We'll send out news releases about them. Sometimes there's also on this page bids, proposals, and RFPs. Sometimes if there's a special like one-off grant program, it'll end up here as well. If a previous employee had an account, but then a new employee is applying, do they need to access the prior account or make a new one? That is a great question. If that is your situation, send me an email at grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov. I can change the account holder in our portal on sort of the back end so that you can get into that. So that is a great question. If you are someone from your organization has gotten in, but you want someone else to be attached, we can do that. Or especially if they've already left your organization. It's also potentially a good idea to have a a like maybe a sort of a shared email account to get into this sort of thing, if that works better for your organization, just for getting into the grant portal. But then have like maybe a person responding to whatever application, whatever email address you put in the application. Okay, is it appropriate for an organization to submit 2 separate grant applications for 2 different programs? One quality of life and one economic development. I would say generally not, just because I think it's highly unlikely that the board is going to award one organization 2 awards in a given grant cycle. That would probably be my answer. I just highly doubt it, especially given how competitive it's going to be. So I would say you may want to focus on one or the other. Many awards are marked website or libraries. Are they really for all websites or libraries? I'm not sure what that question is getting at. So there is like a sort of there is a section under these that sort of quality of life libraries. Those are still within the quality of life program. So those are not like a separate grant, they're here. The reason why they say website at the end is that's sort of the place that you can click on to get to their actual website, if that's your question. So I hope that made it clear. But yes, quite a few libraries have been awarded funding. In general, libraries in Johnson County, if they are big enough, if they've reached, I think, Tier 3 status, then libraries get formula funding from the county for the number of county residents who use their services. But if they are under that, then they don't get funding that way. And so the board has a history of wanting to fund libraries through this mechanism. So if you're a smaller library, they tend to fund you this way. But you don't have to apply if you're a library. But the reason it says website at the end of all of these is that's how you link to their actual organization. Is the board open to general operating requests? Yes, they are. Yes. So this could be for operating support, but you will then also want to explain to justify the amount of like what that operating support is going to do and why that amount. Previous years, it looks like there's been a section for quality of life libraries. It's not been removed. It just falls under quality of life. Good questions. Why is there less funding this year compared to previous cycles? The board was very concerned during budget cycle that they didn't have enough funding. And so staff proposed a budget of $500,000 for the program. And in the series of painful cuts that happens every year in the budget cycle, the board reduced it to $300,000. So that is why. How do you get on the community providers list? We usually just get social services grant information. Send me an email at grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov and I will send your information to our communications team. Any other questions? If you think of any other questions later after this webinar, feel free to email me at any time at grants@johnsoncountyiowa.gov. And I'm the person who responds to all of those. You've got 2 weeks and a day to get your applications in. So there's still plenty of time for questions to emerge. Like I said, this is recorded, so I will make this available. Probably I'll post it on the website, honestly. I think I'll try and cut out, though, the first 8 minutes that I was on the call before everyone got on here and I started. So we'll see if I can cut those out. But yeah, if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'm going to stay on the call for another couple minutes in case some other questions come through. But if not, thank you so much for coming to our webinar. Thank you for your interest in these grant opportunities. And yeah, I'm excited to see these applications that come through and see what kinds of things we can do to support economic development and quality of life in Johnson County. So thank you.